to walk through the corridors of his school and put up a poster for a gay-straight alliance, because he knew that was important and that would make his life and the lives of people like his more bearable. And that's very important. And even before it was on the national radar, 8 years ago in rural Nova Scotia, in the Annapolis Valley, which is rural gets, 8 years ago, a young man moved to the Annapolis Valley, so he was new, he didn't know a soul. And he had to go to school, high school, for the first time. So it's the first day of high school, he doesn't know a soul. You can imagine how stressful that is. So he goes to the first day of high school, he wants to make a good impression, and he decides to wear a pink shirt to high school. And that's all it took. This might seem silly, but 8 years ago, that's all it took. And he was targeted by a few people, that's all it took. A few young people targeted that young man. And the bullying started. And it continued, and he didn't tell a single soul. And then, after a couple of weeks, it came to a point where that young man was assaulted quite badly in the schoolyard. So bad that someone called the cops. And the cops showed up. And the next thing you know, that boy, he's in the principal's office. The boy's parents are in the principal's office. The police are in the principal's office. The principal is in the principal's office. And things haven't changed that much since I was in school. Turns out no one saw a thing. Not a single student saw a thing. And the young boy, he's terrified. He didn't know who did it either. And no teacher saw it. So the principal said, you know what? No one saw a thing. There's nothing we can do. And then the police officer said, well, you know what your problem was? You shouldn't have worn that pink shirt to school. Well, that night, 2 young men in that school who didn't know this boy who got beaten up, they drove to Walmart in Halifax. That's a long drive. They drove to Halifax, they took their own money, they bought every single pink shirt they could find in Walmart. Then they went back to school, and the next morning they passed out those pink shirts to their friends, starting with the football team. Because everyone in that school knew who the bullies were. So the football team got the pink shirts, and then everyone else got the pink shirts. And that day at lunch, when the bullies went into the lunchroom, the room that they controlled, suddenly they were surrounded by everyone in the school wearing pink. Message sent. And then a few days passed, and of course the adults in the town, they start hearing about this, and they don't know what it was all about. And so a local reporter tracked one of the boys down. He tracked the boy down. He called him at home, and he said, she said, did you drive? You're the kid that drove to Walmart and bought pink shirts? And he's like, yeah. She's like, and you and your friend, you used your own money to buy all the pink shirts at Walmart? And he said, yeah. And she said, what'd you do that for? And he didn't really have an answer. So he made one up. He said, oh, didn't you know it's the International Day of Pink? It's the day that young people wear pink in school to say that we're no longer going to stand up, we're no longer going to be intimidated by bullies. Well, that was the first time the International Day of Pink appeared in print. That was 8 years ago. This past year, 8 million high school students registered for and wore pink on the International Day of Pink. On that day, Barack Obama wore a pink shirt to the White House. That's what bravery is all about. And when I think of those 2 young men who stood up, and they did what was right, and they didn't know what they were doing at the time, but they spawned an international movement, that makes me think of people like Jamie Hubley, who had the courage to walk down the hallways and put up those posters for a gay-straight alliance. And when I look at a crowd like this, in these temperatures, standing out and coming out to an event like this, that makes me think that we are very close indeed to not telling young people, don't worry, it will get better. We're getting close to the point where we can say, it is better. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for standing up to bullying. Have a great night. Thank you.